Assalamu alaikum guys. So in this video I want to share my thoughts on a book. It's by Viktor Frankl. It's called Man's Search for Meaning. This is a brilliant book. It's one of the one of those books that sold millions of copies. I think 16 million as it says on the front cover. It's a book I've gone through bits of in the past, but I've always intended to come back and go through it properly and see what it's all about. And from reading it, I can tell and I can say that it is a phenomenal book. It's a man's journey, through the Nazi concentration camps, and he relives his journey and allows us to experience some of it through his words. And it's a deeply moving book. It's a book that really touches upon some really important questions that we have as human beings, in particular, specifically related to suffering. Now, Viktor Frankl has, his own philosophy in regards to the meaning of life and how we're to understand it. He has his own sort of system, which is called logotherapy, and I'm not going to go into that in too much detail. I'm going to more specifically focus on the first part of the book, which is his journey and some of his insights and his thoughts. And I want to touch upon two specific ideas that he presents in this book, which I find are extremely interesting. And I want to sort of correlate them or juxtapose them with Islam. The very first thing is his views in regards to the meaning behind suffering, how to make sense of this. Now, obviously, he went through a very difficult situation, an extremely difficult situation, as did millions of other people. And in these camps, he relives and highlights the torture and the abuse these inmates experienced, the fact that they wouldn't have food to eat. They would be given soup, watery soup, without anything else, anything of substance in it, small pieces of bread, and as a result, physically they were withering away. They were just shrinking. They were losing weight, didn't have energy, didn't have the strength. Yet they were made to work long hours, doing extremely difficult tasks, and many of these inmates would die. They had really poor living conditions, and it's an extremely horrific account from one perspective. But through this, he brings into focus something we all, to a degree, deal with in our own lives, which is to do with suffering. How do we understand suffering? What is the meaning behind suffering? This is one of the fundamental questions that's tackled in this book. Now, according to Viktor Frankl, the way he saw it and some of the ideas he presents are that even no matter how much suffering you're going through, no matter what situation you're in, no matter how much you feel like you don't have control of that difficult situation, you do have control over something, which is your inner self, that he refers to at times as the spiritual self. And you have that control, and you can choose, therefore, your response to the suffering you're experiencing and you're going through. Now, he highlights through his story when he points out that there was individuals at times, he would see people, although they were in the same conditions as everyone else, and such conditions would dictate that an individual becomes extremely selfish, is worried about their own survival. However, he would see individuals time and again that would transcend this. They would choose to react differently to the situation. They would choose to, for example, give their only piece of bread to another fellow inmate, or to smile in the face of someone else, to try and comfort people, although they were suffering as much as everyone else was. And this highlighted to him that, one of the things that this brought forth was that we can choose. We have that choice, no matter what we go through, no matter how difficult things may get in life sometimes, no matter what type of suffering we may experience. We can choose our attitude. We can choose the meaning we decide to give that suffering, and we could choose our attitude in that suffering. And this was a very powerful insight, extremely powerful insight, and something, which is echoed in Islam as well. In Islam, we are told that we will suffer, we will go through hardships. This is a part and parcel of life. There will be some extremely difficult situations that we're put in and that we face. But we are to be patient in these times. We are to show the best of characteristics. Try to do the best we can to resolve that situation, to deal with that situation. And this also leads on to another point, which I found was extremely interesting, was that he highlights around page 50 onwards that his observation that he made in regards to the way some of these inmates chose to display selflessness and this beautiful moral character in such a difficult situation, a situation that would dictate otherwise. This led him to the realization that the human being is more than just what we perceive externally, and that it is not the case, as many people would assume, especially from a materialistic perspective, that that the human being, our actions are determined by our environment, the situation that we're in, and it's only these factors, these external factors, which determine how we act as these human creatures, these human animals. He highlighted that the fact that these inmates were transcending the environment and the situation and the external pressures and displaying amazing values and high moral character, this demonstrated that the human there is an element or an aspect of the human being which, as he mentions earlier, cannot be controlled but transcends the material. And again, like I said, he refers to this as the spiritual. There is something within us, deep down within us. And he also says that this is the very thing that makes you worthy of suffering. You worthy of the suffering that you're going through. And it's a very beautiful way of putting it. And again, this is in correlation, or is in agreement with what we learn in Islam, that there is the physical element of the human being, but there is the true essence of the human being is that spiritual self, the soul. And it's in the purification of the soul that success lies. As God says in the Quran, that that successful are the ones who purify their souls. So that is the key. And I thought that was a very beautiful parallel. However, although this is a very, very beautiful attempt, and one of the better attempts, I think, at trying to make sense of meaning, and in particular trying to make sense of suffering and the meaning behind suffering, I think Islam provides a far better and more comprehensive answer in regards to suffering. Because although Viktor Frankl deals with, or shows us how to deal with suffering, how to see suffering, how to elevate ourselves as human beings through suffering, what he doesn't tackle is, why does suffering exist in the first place? Now, if you look at this purely from a materialistic perspective, well, there are no answers. It's just a brute fact. It just happens. It's something, which is a nuisance, but it's there. It's just a brute fact of life, suffering. But he teaches us, or teaches people, how to deal with that suffering. Whereas from the Islamic perspective, not only do we learn how to deal with suffering, we are provided with the reasons behind suffering. Why do we suffer as human beings? In Islam, God makes clear to us that life is a test. This is not supposed to be paradise. This is not supposed to be the only life that you live. This is a transient period. This is actually a period in which we work to attain the eternal life, which is without suffering, without pain. We are being tested, and that test takes the form of some very difficult, challenging situations in our life sometimes. And not only this, Islam also brings the added comfort of knowing that you're not alone in this suffering, that there is a creator, that you have a creator who created you. And your creator is not this absentee landlord that's just created you and created everything and left you in this world, and then whatever you go through, you're on your own. No. From the Islamic perspective, God is with you. With his power, with his knowledge, with his sight, with his hearing. He hears everything, he knows everything. He's in control of every single situation. So Islam teaches us that we're not alone. No matter what we go through, we're not alone. We're being taken care of. And we have someone to rely upon. And that someone that we're relying upon is the one that has true power and has true control. And there is a deep meaning behind our suffering. We also learn from the Islamic perspective that suffering is a means not only to develop as a human being, something Frankl also touches upon, which is that it's an opportunity to grow from an internal moral perspective. But from the Islamic perspective, not only is that the case, but it's also an opportunity for us to grow closer to God, to our Creator. And this is human psychology, unfortunately, that when things are comfortable and when things are easy, we don't care. We become delusional to an extent. We become distracted. We start to believe and think that we are in control, that we are independent, and this leads to arrogance. But it's suffering which humbles the human being. It allows us to see our flaws, it allows us to see our weaknesses, and it opens the door for us to be able to communicate and connect with our Creator, to turn back to Him, to establish or re-establish that relationship with our Creator, which at the end of the day is the fundamental purpose of our human existence from the Islamic perspective, which is to know God and to worship Him. So just to conclude, I think it's a phenomenal book. I think everyone should read this book. There are some beautiful lessons and beautiful insights that we can all benefit from, whether we're Muslim or non-Muslim. However, like I said, I think Islam provides a far more comprehensive understanding in regards to suffering, in regards to how we're to understand suffering, in regards to how we're to deal with suffering. However, unfortunately, most people don't know this. Most people think about Islam and they just think about what the news says, and that's it. But Islam, like I've said many times, is extremely comprehensive and it addresses all aspects of life, fundamental aspects of life that we all of us human beings are concerned with, and it has the answers to all of the questions that we ask. So that being said, I think it's a good book. It's a extremely deep book, and it's one of those books that if you read, you will definitely take away some life lessons. You will definitely take away some positives. You'll definitely take away some tools to be able to deal with difficult times. That being said, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Until next time, take care. Assalamu alaikum.